Good evening and welcome to First Presbyterian Church. On behalf of the church and the congregation, I'd like to welcome you all, especially on this particularly rainy evening. So thank you for coming out in support of the Helen Elbert Chamber Music Recital. My name is Weston Jennings and I'm the Director of Music here, and it is always a pleasure and a joy to be hosting wonderful musical events such as this. So without further ado, I'd like to pass the microphone on to Margie Adams and more word of introduction.
Good evening. Welcome to the Helen Elbert Chamber Music Festival, sponsored by the East Texas Music Teachers Association. I hope that you've come expecting to enjoy beautiful music played by chamber groups made up of students and community residents. Tonight we will hear the standard mix of instruments for chamber music: the violin, the viola, the cello, the double bass, and piano. What you might not be expecting is the music and sounds of some other groups, such as boom wipers. So wait for that. That's going to be very interesting. Chamber music was performed in homes or houses for dinner guests. The groups were small because they didn't have a lot of guests, and so they had small musical groups to perform for the people that were in the house eating the dinner. The chamber music has broadened to include groups that have stepped out of the box, so to speak, and they play many types of music such as folk, jazz, pop, and crossover. So it's come a long way since 3 or 4 musicians playing for dinner guests. The instrumental selection has expanded to include folk instruments as well as brass and reeds and obviously drums and other things. This festival is a tribute to Helen Elbert, a very fine and gracious lady who taught piano in Tyler for many years and always seemed to have outstanding piano students. Throughout the music community of Tyler and East Texas, Helen Elbert's name is synonymous with all that is admirable in the field of music education. If one of Helen's students walked on stage to perform, you are assured of hearing a very well-prepared and well-performed piece of music. At least one of her students went on to tour Europe after her graduation from Juilliard. And on a personal note, quickly, my daughter and this particular young lady were the same age and played in some of the same recitals many years ago. And it was always very nice to watch the student go up on stage. What she did was she came to the performance with needlepoint. And she sat in the audience doing needlepoint until it was time to play. And when it was time for her turn, she put down the needlepoint, went up and performed beautifully on stage, came back, picked up her needlepoint, and continued. So, just a little heads up for all of you all, that's kind of a stress reliever. So, learn needlepoint. Okay. Helen held numerous offices in the Tyler Music Teachers Association, the East Texas Music Teachers Association, and in the Coterie chapter of the National Federation of Music Clubs. Her leadership and friendship in the music community of Tyler, as well as her willingness to give of her time and talent, more than qualify her to have this music festival named in her honor. Tonight, we are pleased to welcome her son, Roland Elbert, who is here to help us celebrate her legacy of fine music. After the festival is over, if you would like to come up and look at a display table that we have set up with Helen's picture and some of her teaching pieces that her family loaned or gave to East Texas music teachers. And there's some pictures there, some thank you notes from various associations that she was a judge. And so just if you want to, just come up and just see a little bit of Helen and what we remember from Helen's legacy. So we invite you to relax and enjoy an evening of beautiful and varied musical sounds.
boards in that association consider her to be the Dean of East Texas music teachers. We always enjoy hearing her beautifully prepared students perform in our events. At one point, Helen and I had this conversation about our events, including achievement auditions, which we held last weekend, which was really her brainchild, because she judged a similar event in Dallas and expressed a desire to institute it in Tyler, which we have, and it's a very successful event. We're grateful to her for her inspiration there. Another dream of hers in that conversation we had was to have an opportunity for piano students to accompany other musicians, singers, instrumentalists, and chamber music opportunities, as well as other ensembles. You may not know that Helen herself loved performing chamber music with her string colleagues, Betty Racing and Marina Johnson, and they performed a lot in East Texas, primarily in Tyler, but she loved that medium. So tonight is her brainchild as well, and her inspiration is here, and I just know that she's smiling down on this event as it happens, as well as last year when it was instituted. When Helen passed away last summer, her family expressed a desire that any memorials in her memory be dedicated to a scholarship fund to further the education of a worthy graduating senior for college music study. And the first recipient received the award last year. East Texas music teachers were the ones who instituted this scholarship, and fortunately, through the generosity of her family and others who loved her, it is now being administered by East Texas Communities Foundation, and it will continue in perpetuity. And we want to thank Paul Penny and Mary Lynn Smith of East Texas Communities for making this possible from now on. So we're very happy about that. I would like to tell you a little bit about this year's recipient before we go on with the program. And forgive me for reading notes, but she has quite a resume. Her name is Gabriela Campos. She's a senior at Chapel Hill High School, where she is one of the drum majors of the marching band. She's active in the East Texas Youth Orchestra. Her instrument is flute. She is a member of the Student Senate at Chapel Hill, the National Technical Honor Society. She has volunteered at East Texas Medical Center for a couple of summers. She's an altar server in her church. And to top it off, she works 20 hours a week every week. So she's quite an accomplished and busy young woman. She has a very good excuse for not being here tonight. It's prom night at Chapel Hill. So we wish that Gabriela is having a wonderful time tonight. We wish her well in her music study at Stephen F. Austin University, where she hopes to become a band director. And we're very thankful to the generosity of the Elbert family and all of those who contributed to this fund. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Sue Elbert. Vicky and I are music professors at UT Tyler. And this evening, I'd like to sing Glitter and Decay, which is an aria from Bernstein's opera Candide this evening. So this aria is in the context of Cunegonde turned up in Paris in the 18th century. So the opera starts in the country of Westphalia, where Candide and Cunegonde are about to get married. But on the day of their wedding, a war breaks out. After escaping the war that destroyed her family, Cunegonde turns up alive in Paris. There's a party in progress, and she is forced to entertain important Parisians. Cunegonde arrays herself in her jewels in this aria. She sings that she must conceal her unhappiness by laughter and cheerful demeanor. Now I give you Glitter and Decay. The last part of our program this evening features original compositions, and this is a large part of this festival, as each year the association features a local composer, and this year that is Dr. Kyle Gollings from the University of Texas at Tyler, who is going to be premiering some works from his upcoming opera that he is running. And we also sponsor a local composition contest for our high school and younger students. And this year's winner was Miss Abigail McKinney, and she is visiting with us tonight. Abigail, will you please stand and be recognized? Abigail wrote a composition called Lift Your Eyes for vocal quartet and piano, and unfortunately the ensemble was not available to perform that tonight. However, Abigail did enter this composition in the state Texas Music Teachers Composition Contest, and she placed third at the state level. That is quite an We are very happy that our runner-up to that composition contest, Faith Watkins, is here tonight to perform her song, A Song for Emily. And that will be followed by a very special set of songs by Kate Arringer, who is a former UT Tyler piano major, and you will hear a little bit more about her story in a moment. Kate has just released her first album called Pipe Dreams. So please enjoy the rest of the program. Thank you.
Hi everyone. My name's Kate Oranger. I'm so glad to be here tonight. I'm going to read my songs, so I'm just going to do a little bit of talking first. First, I want to thank you, Ms. Conway, for collaborating with me on those. It's been really fun. And then second, I want to say thank you to the East Texas Music Teachers Association for helping raise money to help me when I was in the hospital. It really helped so much. And I'm so grateful still for all the support you guys gave me. And so, there's that. 3 years ago, I was hit head-on by a drunk driver, and I was crushed from the waist down, and I had to be rebuilt through constructive surgeries in my hips, legs, knees, and ankles, and I broke my right hand. I was about to graduate with a piano degree from Miss Conway, but didn't get to. So I started writing songs as a way to help keep music in my life and to help me heal from all the trauma that I've been through, because it's been a lot. And I hope that my music can even help other people. That's the goal. So tonight I'm sharing with you guys my song Simple Things, then Butterfly, which is listed as Lullaby on the thing, but it's really Butterfly. And then On the Edge. And the first two I wrote with my friend Linda Lester in Nashville. I'm lucky enough that I get to go out there and work with some really awesome songwriters, and I got to record my album there. And Butterfly is about my miscarriage, because when the wreck happened, I was pregnant, and it caused me to miscarry, and now it's really not a good idea for me to ever have children. So that song kind of is about that. And then the last one touches on my post-traumatic stress disorder that I deal with every day from the trauma from the accident. And so what I really want to do with music right now is try to help facilitate healing in others and raise awareness to PTSD, infant loss and miscarriage, and drunk driving, because they all have affected me so personally, and I know a lot of other people deal with these things. So I hope you guys enjoy my songs.
Oh librettist, the text writer for both of these. Thank you. And just a really big thank you to all the performers in this piece and in all the previous pieces, and you all for coming out and making this happen. I hope you all, this is chamber music. It's about playing together with friends and enjoying making music together. I hope after the concert is over, you will spend some time milling about, talking to the performers and asking them about their experience here. So, thank you.
What a fun night of music. Wonderful music made by these musicians. Can we give them another round of applause? You know, they think they have the instruments, but they don't realize they're the instrument's the tool. So you see all this creativity, and it's just such a wonderful night to get together and celebrate all of these students, all of these musicians, teachers, area musicians. thank you all for coming, and we're looking forward to next year's Chamber Music Festival. Thank you.